on this episode of Raising the Wild Ones podcast.
We've made this joke already beforehand, but we're interviewing Jesus, or the person who plays Jesus.
The gospel is that Jesus is reaching down to yank us out of our sin, right? And so if you're going to give a gospel presentation and you're not going to talk about sin, as the cross dropped and hit, the foot peg that I'm standing on the cross sheared off, and I just dropped straight to the stage.
Raising the Wild Ones podcast.
All right, Caleb, do you want to jump us off here?
Yeah, sure. Today we have a very special guest, Joshua Lee, who actually plays Jesus in The Promise, and also you're the executive producer, correct?
Something like that. Executive director.
Something like that.
Yeah, June
Executive
1st.
director. There you go. So we've made this joke already beforehand, but we're interviewing Jesus, or the person who plays Jesus in the Promise, and we'll get him to explain a little bit of kind of about what he does. And you're a dad, correct?
I am. Yes.
Yes.
So I've got
Okay.
currently 5 munchkins running around at home, and
Oh wow.
and so we're staying busy.
Cool.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So I guess we'll go ahead and just jump into it. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and kind of what led you to getting the role on The Promise. Oh, first, do you have a dad joke?
So have you all heard about the restaurant on the moon?
No.
A great food, but no atmosphere.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah,
you
that's a
ever
good
ever
one.
hear one and you think you just got to write it down? That's
Yeah.
one of them. That's
Record
one to
it.
remember
No.
for later.
Yeah, that's funny. I've got one for y'all too. Then we'll get started. Okay. What is the difference between a poorly dressed man on a tricycle and a well-dressed man on a bicycle?
What?
A tire.
There
Oh,
you go.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, a dad joke just kind of lands, right?
Yeah. All right. I guess we'll go ahead and get back into it. So, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, and like I said, kind of how you got the role of playing Jesus, and a little bit about what The Promise is, and just kind of go from there.
Sure. So I am from Oregon originally, and we moved down to Texas in about 2016. I was getting a master's degree at Baylor University in music, and when I think it was the second summer I was there, I saw an audition poster in Roxy Grove Hall down at Baylor, and it was for The Promise. And it looked really interesting for a couple of reasons, one of which is that it was Christian-based, faith-based entertainment, but it looked like it was really high quality, which is rare. And then the other was that it was in Glen Rose, and being down in Waco, that was about an hour, 15 minutes away from where we were living at the time. So it seemed doable. So I reached out to the director and said, hey, what is this? Like, how do you audition? And auditions happened to be right smack in the middle of an opera thing that I was doing in Los Angeles for that summer. So didn't end up getting to do it that year. But then graduated in December from Baylor, did a whole bunch of auditions for different opera companies, and nothing really panned out. And so I called up Chuck and said, hey, I'm available for the fall. And he was like, oh, we just cast the show. So he goes, but I think I have a couple of roles left. So he had Joseph and Bartimaeus that he hadn't found somebody to do yet. And so my first season was fall of 2019. And I was Joseph and Bartimaeus and a townsperson and a Roman soldier and a little bit of everything. And it was a really neat experience. The Promise is one of the neater performance opportunities that I've ever had. One, because it's getting to tell people about Jesus using, the music and the performance aspects, which I'm really passionate about. But the other is just the family atmosphere. Nobody up there is getting rich doing what they're doing. We try to get people a stipend that covers at least their gas, to get here from wherever they're coming from. But there's a huge heart the people here have for telling the story of Jesus and telling it well. And we have families that have been doing this for 3 generations. The grandkids of original cast members are in the show and things like that. So It's just a neat deal. It's been really neat to be a part of it. And so after that first season, the following spring, they were trying to get our spring show kind of officially launched. It was the first season in a while that they'd tried to do something in the spring. And the guy that we had playing Jesus was unavailable for the spring. So the director asked if I'd audition for Jesus. And I did and got cast. And then just have kind of kept doing it for about the last 5 years. So we've kind of expanded our show repertoire a little bit. So we have the spring show that runs around Easter now, which is based on around the Passion narrative. We have the fall show, which is kind of our main flagship show that runs in September, October, a little bit of November, and that goes all the way from Jesus' birth to his ascension. And then we've added the Christmas show the last couple of years, and it's grown a little bit. We went from having, just a free weekend show to now we're doing a full 10 shows with pre-show concerts with Josh Weathers and Sanctus Real and a couple other names that you might have heard of that are going to be coming in to do some
Sanctus
concerts.
Real.
So,
I haven't heard
it's
Sanctus Real in a while. Yeah.
yeah. So we're excited about being able to do a little bit bigger deal up for Christmas this year, and so that's what I've kind of jumped into now, working full time for the Promise as of June. So
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome. And we actually were able to go to the Promise a few weeks ago, like in November sometime. But of course, it's been a few weeks now. But we took our kids, and I've got three sons, and ranging from 3 to 9, and it was like you said, a good family atmosphere. It was amazing. We set up close. We got wet when it rained up there close, and
yeah,
it was amazing for my kid to take my kids and let them watch it because like say when Jesus walks on water, they just lost their mind. Like, how is he doing that? What is going on? Like, it was so fun to watch them. And then say during the crucifixion scene, they're huddled up in our laps, like crying. I mean, it's such an emotional show. And it was amazing. Whether you've seen it probably 10 times or that was my first time to see it and my children's first time to see it. It just blew us away, and it was awesome. So I think what kind of a question I wanted to know, how is it playing Jesus? You think about the weight that carries and just all that goes into playing the character of Jesus. Tell us a little bit about how you prepare for that and what does it take to play such a big role?
yeah. I get asked that question a decent amount when I'm talking to people about things, and I think my first thing is you don't want to get it wrong, right? It's
Yes,
something that's
yes.
a big deal. It's a big responsibility, and particularly because as someone who loves Jesus and is trying to follow Jesus and be a good representation of him in regular life, like it's not something you want to screw up. And so uh, I think the biggest thing is I try to take a moment before every show and just ask that the Holy Spirit does something special and that there's something authentic about Jesus that comes through to somebody through whatever it is. Because, I don't look like a first century Jew probably. And so, I'm not going to look exactly like Jesus looked. I'm not going to talk exactly like Jesus talked, but in spending time in the Gospels, before that first season, just trying to really like, how does Jesus respond to people? How does he like, I don't think Jesus walks by anybody. Like, I don't think he doesn't just like not acknowledge someone, and like,
Yeah.
so trying to think about that on stage, like as you're working around, like if somebody reaches out and is like, Jesus, he's not gonna be like, no, I don't have time. Like we specifically have stories where he was like, no, I have time for you. Um,
Hmm.
so there's that part of it trying to like how does the perfect man treat a crowd of people? Like it's a something to try and wrap your head around, right? And so I think that's something that tried to spend a lot of time like considering who Jesus is and then how Jesus treats people. Um, Another thing I usually say is that was really convicting because I'm walking around the stage going, okay, how does Jesus treat this person? How does Jesus treat this person? How does Jesus treat this person? I was like, I think I'm supposed to be doing this more often than just like on stage and when I'm trying to put this character together, right? I'm supposed to be thinking about how Jesus treats people regularly all the time. And So there was some good spiritual growth in it for me as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's the one of the things, just as a performer in general, you try not to let a performance get stale, right? You try to find new things and new emphases that you can put on different things. And that's a little different here because there's certain things that I feel that's what I really feel like that communicated well what, this piece of scripture was trying to communicate. So then once I feel like I have that, I don't want to lose it. But then, I'll say it a little bit differently and I'll be like, oh, maybe that's really the way that it needs to be delivered, And so I think there's also, the same sense of when you go back to a piece of scripture and you come back to it and you're like, oh, I didn't see that before. Even as you're delivering like Jesus's words as like lines, you're like, oh, maybe he meant it like that. Like there's
Yeah. Yeah.
things that are kind of fun to go through. And then I've got, it's just been a neat experience because there's so much of the script is just right out of the Bible. And so I have a whole bunch of Jesus's story just stuck in my head forever now, that I'm never gonna and that's a good thing. So
Yes. That. Yeah.
uh
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
so it's been a really neat experience. Definitely a challenging experience and one that, the uh I think there's a very obvious way to get to where the show's about Jesus, you're playing Jesus, like coming out for curtain call, there's a lot of applause, like people are excited to see Jesus. And so there's definitely a way where it could be like all about the actor who's playing Jesus, right? And so I think that's something that I've tried to consciously like run away from. Um, and so like when we do the curtain call, one of the first things I'm like, I'm Josh, I'm not Jesus.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
And that, and
so
we can talk about that for a minute because that was also I've got several parts that of course were my favorite. It seems like there was a bunch of it I really enjoyed, but that was one of my favorite moments where you basically come out and you say we're just people, we're not, because it's very easy to say hey we're talking to Jesus today, but you're just an actor playing playing a part, and it's
Yeah.
awesome when you come out and just say hey we're normal people, and we're here to share the gospel, and I think that really probably affects a lot of people in a positive way, and it's really cool. So one thing I kind of wanted to ask is, what's a good way for people to go about sharing the gospel? And you do a really good job at the end of it, just saying, hey, this is kind of the gospel, and this is kind of some things to focus on and look at. And so how what would be your advice to somebody on just how to share the gospel with people?
yeah, that's a really great question. Because I feel like I've gotten relatively fluent at giving the gospel presentation at the end of the show, and I, planned that out, and I feel like I can deliver it with conviction and like that's there. But if you're like, I'm running into somebody at the gas station, like it's
Hmm.
not going to be anywhere near that.
Yeah.
You know? Um,
Yeah.
and so, but I think just thinking about like when I was praying about like what to say, because I did this for that first spring, I pretty much have kept the invitation the same. It'll change here and there a little bit, depending on if there's something, I feel that's special about that night. But one of the things was I wanted to be like clear that it's not just I had a discipler once that was like, I realized I was telling my parents the gospel wrong. It was just that Jesus loves you and you just need to climb the happy ladder to heaven. And that's the gospel, and the gospel is that Jesus is reaching down to yank us out of our sin, right? And so if you're going to give a gospel presentation and you're not going to talk about sin, there's no gospel, right? And so
Hmm.
that was something that, it's the I think the line that people struggle with is, well, I don't want to like offend people and I don't want to like have people be like, oh, I just finished this great show and now he's going to talk about sin, but you can't get away from. And that's why I felt like Jesus's story about the Pharisee and the tax collector is a great way to introduce that because it's Jesus, that people aren't going to be argue with Jesus when he said this is what it's about, right? Um,
Yeah.
but then he has that comparison of like, that whole idea of him not coming for the people who think they have it all together, right? if you think you have it all together, I've got nothing to say to you. You don't know that you need me yet. Like that's
Hmm.
um and so that's the part that I felt like was something that could be presented in a way that people would be like, "Oh, this is Jesus's story." And then recognizing if I'm in that place where I know that I need a savior, then I'm ready to hear what's next,
Yeah.
and that's where, that I'm hoping people are able to connect with that at the end of the show. So,
I got a thought and a question for you. And so
sure.
I've spent some time working in like music production, not necessarily like
Yeah.
theater production, but I know so I worked with a thing called Rock the Desert, and it was a Christian music festival. And
Mhm.
but not everybody that worked that festival were Christians. Is that the same? Do you kind of run into that with the passion? And do you have like actors or people on your production team that are there for a job? And if so, like how do you like, I guess, share the gospel with them when they've seen the whole thing like every night? I don't know, it's
Yeah.
just interesting thought I had.
We are, unapologetically Christian,
Yeah.
like, organization. But we don't make people sign a statement of faith before they're working with us or anything like that. And so we actually had a guy who I believe was raised Islamic. I don't. He might say
Ooh.
he's more agnostic now. But his wife auditioned, and we kind of roped him in because he wasn't doing anything and was going to be there anyway. And so I don't know if the needle moved on him as far as what he thinks about Jesus through the course of the show, but he was there and he obviously got to experience, what the story of Jesus is all about. And he was a neat addition to our crew, asked some good questions. And so I know there have been a few people in the past that have been definitively not Christian that have been a part of the show. And so I think it was neat. He ended up carpooling with some people and getting to have some good conversations on the way down and on the way back. And so I think those are good opportunities, and if someone's willing to be a part of it and willing to be respectful of, the story and what we're doing, we pray before every show. We end all of our cast meetings with somebody yelling, "Let's tell them about Jesus." Like
Yeah.
that's so there's there's hopefully an opportunity for them to see a group of people coming together because they love Jesus, and an opportunity to see the story. And God says his word doesn't return void, so you got to believe that something's going to happen there. So,
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. So another part of the play where we just loved was the temptation scene of Jesus. And where there's several things in that scene that just blew my kids away, which was awesome. They loved it. But um, you know, I wanted you to talk a little bit about the role between Jesus and Satan that y'all portrayed, because probably one of the our favorite actors also in the play was Satan, and how he was portrayed, because he was in most of the scenes, and it kind of makes you think, like, going back to, say, the story of Job, where he's Satan was, I'm sure Satan was there, when Jesus was, and how he kind of manipulates the crowd and manipulates, say, the Pharisees and different things. And I think the way y'all portray him is awesome, and I think it's a good reflection, and for each of us in our personal lives to say, that evil is out there, and we need to be aware of it, and we need to guard ourselves against it. And like I said, I just think y'all did an awesome job of the Satan and Jesus characters. And then there was another scene where you're walking out, and here he comes, and then you just do something like, and then stick your arms out, and he's gone. And it's just, that's an awesome relationship that y'all portray between Jesus and Satan. So I wanted you to talk just a little bit about that, and kind of how y'all went about doing that.
yeah, Satan has been part of the show since it was written. The song "It Is Written" I think was actually added 3 or 4 years, probably in the early '90s. The original show was a little bit more bare bones, a little bit shorter. But Drew Tracy is our Satan, and he does a really good job of just hate to think kind of what, they said the C.S. Lewis went into depression after writing Screw Tape Letters because he was living in a demon's head the whole time, right? So I'm praying for Drew
Hmm.
that he's able
Yes,
to
yes.
kind of deal with that the right way. But I think that he's able to do that in a really effective way. And there was actually some talk in our production meetings this year about whether we include Satan too much. Um, and so I think that's something we're evaluating a little bit, just as far as like, um, you know, it, Ephesians 6 says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers and authorities of this dark world, right? So we don't want
Hmm.
to minimize the spiritual battle that really, when we are like waging spiritual warfare, we're not fighting against people. We're fighting against spiritual forces that exist around us, right? And so I think that's part of the reality that we want to convey in the show. Um, and I think the pushback from the other side was, well, we don't want to make it look like Satan is making people just do stuff, because every
Hmm.
person there had their ability to choose what they were doing, right? Everybody was making their own choices. Everybody was, when they're yelling crucify him, that was of their own volition. They're not getting off the hook for the sin that they're committing in that moment. And so I think that's kind of the tension of how we wanted to get that. And I feel like we're in a pretty good spot with it. And I think that, people are able to connect with seeing that spiritual battle kind of, and one of the things we keep trying to tell the kids is don't look at Satan. Like, you can't see him, right? So, um, hang on just a second. So, sorry about that.
Oh,
Oh,
you're
no
good.
worries. Yeah.
Uh, we got a large water bill, so I'm trying to get back with the city of Glen Rose and be like,
Oh,
"What's going on
why
with
is it
that?"
so big?
Yeah. So, but that's, I think, part of that reality, right? And then we're dealing with what we can see, but then we're also dealing with what we can't see. And So I think that's something for people to wrestle with, right? There's spiritual opposition out there, and it's a real thing. But then also, like, that other side, that it doesn't excuse people from the responsibility for their actions.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a
so
good point.
Well,
Yeah,
kind of
that's
since we're
okay.
on that topic there, what about like during the show of, because spiritual warfare, do y'all have like funky stuff happen? I mean, because you're actively sharing the gospel very in a large, I guess on a large stage. It is a very big stage too, but
yeah, it is. And we're about 100 feet wide, I think, at the
yeah,
largest one. But I think there's definitely an understanding that we're going to be facing some kind of opposition. And sometimes it feels like that's a little bit more tangible. And sometimes it feels like it's a little bit more of an undercurrent. We have people getting sick. The gal who plays the mother of our narrator family um, pulled a muscle as she was running across the stage and had to sit out the last two shows. And that was kind of a bummer. And so, we try to, um, pray against spiritual attacks, and pray that our people are protected. We got a lot of people driving a long way at midnight to go home from the show, things like that. And so I think there's things like that we kind of want to be aware of, just from that perspective, that if there are spiritual components to those things, that we don't want to be um, just dismissing those as
yeah,
related to spiritual warfare. There have been a couple of times where I felt like things were really, really um, evident. There was my first spring, I think. We had a show where I was driving up to the amphitheater, and they had shut down um, Highway 144 between Waco and Glen Rose, and just like they were parked across the middle of the road and just turning people around. And I rolled up to try and figure out, and then they were just turn around, go back. And I don't get any reception out there, so I was like, I really hope I can find another way to get to Glen Rose right now. Um, so I got enough reception to figure out another way around. I was going to be a little late, so I let them know I was going to be a little late. Um, and we get up there, and the um, I might be conflating two different shows together. I think it was all the same show, but the weather was terrible. and we had expected rain. A lot of times we'll try to keep a show going because storms tend to break up around the hill that we're on. So a lot of times we can kind of keep it going with a light drizzle or whatever, but it ended up just dumping. And we paused the show, kind of people went to their cars and we waited our, 20 minutes, half hour, or whatever, and it looked like it wasn't going to let up. So they actually the stage manager got up and announced that we were canceling the show, and nobody left. And about 5 minutes later, it started clearing up, and we're like, all right, well, I guess we'll keep having a show.
Yeah.
And so we kept going with the show. Um, and we get to the crucifixion scene, and there's the way that was set up, there's a hole in the stage at the top of the mountain that the cross actually drops into. And so uh depending on where it kind of gets set, that drop can be like a 5 inch drop or like the hole's like a foot deep. So it can be like a 10-inch drop. And I could feel like as it was getting lit, no, this is going to be a big one, like as it's about to drop down. Um, and then as the cross dropped and hit, the foot peg that I'm standing on the cross sheared off, and I just
Mm.
dropped straight to the stage. And at
Oh,
that point, our mountain was built a little differently. There's about a foot and a half of stage in front of me at that point, and then like a 10-foot drop down to the concrete stage below that. So as that was happening, I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm either going to catch the front of this lip or this is going to be a lot longer of a fall than, and thankfully, was able to kind of fall to the side a little bit and came down right in front of it. And we blacked out and they figured out, got Jesus up on one of the other crosses that was up there and we finished the scene. But that was a very like, and it was funny because I was thinking, I heard that foot thing crack the night before because it had been a Friday night show and this was Saturday. I was like, I thought, I should probably talk to somebody about that. But the end of the show happened. I forgot about it. But that was so then I have a little bit of PTSD at that point, and we're about to do the ascension at the end of the show, and so I'm just like freaking out a little bit. But we get to the end of the show, we do the show, we give the invitation at the end of the show, like it all finished. Um, but starting the invitation, I was just like, y'all, I feel like something was not wanting us to get through this show tonight.
man.
And so this
Yeah.
is,
Wow.
I'm glad y'all
Yeah.
stayed. Somebody needs to hear this right
Yeah.
now.
That's crazy.
So yeah, I definitely think there have been, yeah, like I said, sometimes maybe more tangible than others that we've kind of
Yeah.
seen that play
Yeah.
out.
And I'll say
Wow.
that crucifixion scene is extremely intense. And I'm sure it's very physically demanding on you and the actors. And I don't know if it's makeup or what it is, but the criminals on the crosses, they
Mhm.
are extremely good at what they do. I mean, they're very convincing, and it's a very emotional, intense scene, and it's probably very physical.
Yeah. When it's hot outside, I'm probably drinking 5 or 6 bottles of water through Act Two. So
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Well, cool. Well, we're kind of coming a little bit towards the end here, but we wanted to give you a couple minutes to kind of say like if people want to, find out more about the show, where do they go if
yeah,
they want to talk to you more, or kind of give you a minute here to, I guess you got the Christmas show that's coming up.
we
You could
do.
kind of
That's
talk about
probably our
that for a
next
sec.
big thing. We open the Christmas show on December 6th. And so we're like I mentioned, the Christmas show is going to be a little bigger deal this year. So we're doing the 6th and the 7th, the first weekend of December. We're doing the 13th and the 14th, the second weekend. And then we're doing the 18th, the 19th, the 20th, the 21st, the 22nd, and the 23rd. So
Wow.
Nice.
it's going to be a lot in a row. So it's a little bit shorter of a show. It's about an hour and a half. So we're going to try to get everybody out at about 9 o'clock. And so it's not going to be quite as late of a night as what we've done in the fall show. But we're trying to get a lot of people out here and, see the story of Jesus and have a good Christmas concert. And we'll have some family activities and some ornament decorating and a petting zoo and a lot of fun things for
Oh,
people to do
cool.
for their Christmas season. So we're
Well,
excited
sweet.
about that.
And that's what the promise in Glen Rose, right? You're outside, just outside of Glen Rose, Texas. So we've got
Yes. So
quite a few
yeah,
of our listeners are here in Texas. So
yeah. So
most of
we're
them actually.
kind of draw a circle through Granbury, Stephenville, and Cleburne, and we're kind of right in the middle of all of that. So if people want to come out or see more information, our website is thepromiseglenrose.com. No in. The name of the is The Promise in Glen Rose, but just thepromiseglenrose.com. And there's a lot of information there about the show, about how you can get tickets for the Christmas show, and anything else that you might want to find out.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, is there anything else, kind of as we finish up here, you want to say or talk about? Or I guess one other quick question I had, if it's all right with you, is how do you write the show? I mean, it's I guess like I mean, because it is a show, you have to figure out lines and stuff like that. And I was just wondering, like, do you just open up the Bible and be like, okay, guys, we're gonna. I mean, I don't know, like that interests me.
Yeah, the original show was written based on the obviously the story of the life of Christ, but then the original side narrative was a grandpa and some kids from North Texas looking for dinosaur fossils, and they, in a very 80s way, are magically transported into like the story of
Yeah.
Jesus. And the board made a decision about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe, to try and make it a little bit more timeless, and update some of the music. And so now the narrative is a first century Jewish family that's kind of following the story as it happens. Um, and there's definitely some Promise purists out there that are like, we need to bring Grandpa back because that's the promise. And so I can appreciate that. But also, we also want people to come to the show. And, one of the original songs was actually a Sandy Patty song, if you're familiar with Sandy Patty. And a lot of the music had that kind of early 90s contemporary Christian feel to it. And so, the board made a decision. We don't want people sitting out there to be like, oh, this was written in the late 80s and early 90s. And you can
Good,
tell,
good old
right?
90s, man. Good old
Right.
90s.
And so um, tried to make it a little bit more of a cinematic score, just give it a more, like I said, kind of timeless feel to the show. And some of that involved, rewriting some of those side narratives. And so the director who was here when I was just getting started, Chuck King, is a really gifted writer. And so he went through and rewrote the side narrative. Obviously, we didn't change much about the Jesus part because that's the important part, right? But trying to give a little bit more feel to that. And he had actually lived in Israel for a good chunk of
Oh,
time
wow.
with his family. And so he had some good perspective on Israel and kind of Jewish customs and those kinds of things that he brought with him to the show. And so it's really just trying to craft a cohesive story, right? You want everything to be there for a purpose, and you want it all to fit. You don't want things that are just kind of sticking out, or you don't want to go over here and, talk about this when it just pulls attention away from the main focus of the story. So we've had opportunities to kind of edit some things, and we wrote a bunch of the Christmas show a couple of years ago, and I was a part of that. And really, it's just trying to develop the story and move it along to what the point is. And so the Christmas show has kind of a title of "Fear Not," and so the entire show is based on, like, God is keeping his promises to his people. We see that in Zechariah and Elizabeth, and we see that with Mary and Joseph, and we see that with even the three kings as they're like following the star and God keeping his promise to get them where he's leading them. And so there's a great song called "Fear Not" by a guy named Ronnie Freeman that he's allowed us to use to the end of the show that really sums up kind of the whole thing. But then as you're writing individual scenes, it's okay, so how does that lead us back to the point of is God
Yeah.
keeping promises, and so those are kind of some of the big picture things you want to keep in mind as we're
Awesome.
putting the show together.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, guys, if you guys want to go see The Promise, it's going to be, I'll probably put those dates down in the description. That we're going to try to post this one up in a couple days. We normally post up on Wednesdays. And so thank you, Josh, for just hanging out with us and chatting with us about some stuff. And if you want to go see Jesus in Glen Rose, you can go see Josh, who is not Jesus, but he plays Jesus.
Yeah, there you go.
And so, all right. Well, Caleb, you got anything to kind of close?
I just want to say thank you for coming on and talking to us. And it was amazing. My kids loved it. My wife loved it, and I loved it. And if you're listening out there and you haven't seen it yet, you need to go see it. It's an awesome play. So.
Right on. Well, hopefully we'll get some people around for Christmas, and I appreciate y'all having me on.
Anytime.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you guys for listening to Raising the Wild Ones podcast. I know me and Caleb sure had a ton of fun making this episode and just kind of going on our rants and stuff like that. And I just wanted to hop in real quick and be sure to remind you guys to like the podcast, share the podcast, tell your friends about the podcast, tell your cats, dogs, everybody. Tell your fishing and hunting buddies, right? I know it's hunting season, and during hunting season you do a lot of just like sitting around and hanging out, and just tell them about this podcast and tell anybody you think would like to hear our podcast about us. And please also, if you'd like to, just drop us a line at raisingwildonespodcast@gmail.com. Tell us about future episodes you would want us to talk about, and also just let us know what you think in general about our podcast. We would love to hear from you guys, and we just thank you so much for listening to our podcast.
Hey everybody, I just wanted to reach out and bring you some exciting news. Our Patreon is now live. Patreon is a way to support this podcast so we can keep it going. For $6 a month, which is the cost of a cup of coffee, you get exclusive content that is for members only. This includes special episodes, show notes, and early release of our upcoming episodes. As we grow, more will become available through our membership. Another exciting thing is that we will donate $1 out of the $6 membership fee to missions. This money will go into the hands of missionaries on the ground doing the Lord's work. So go to patreon.com/Raising the Wild Ones podcast, or click on the link to our Patreon site in the show notes below. Thank you for supporting this podcast, and God bless.